Hey there, welcome back to the College Basketball Bracket Science Podcast, your encyclopedia for the college basketball season and beyond. We are starting up our series of power rankings. It is time to start diving into the new year, start talking about conference by conference. We're going to go 1 through 18 of the ACC. Yes, remember they have 18 teams in their conference. We're going to go 1 through 18, breaking down all of these rosters. We're going to talk about maybe a potential Duke repeat. Duke is the powerhouse in the ACC. Will they repeat this year, or will the likes of Louisville, North Carolina, and NC State really make an impact and kind of dethrone Duke this year? The bottom half of the ACC was horrible last year. They were closer to a mid-major than they were the rest of the power conferences last year. Will they improve this year? Will they continue to suck? We are going to talk about that. Before we dive into that, let's get into a quick little bit of news and notes. The first thing we want to discuss is the Players Era matchups were released. So this is credit to Matt Norlander from CBS. He posted this graphic of all the games for the Players Era Festival. Players Era Festival is the biggest MTE that we have now. The Maui Invitational used to hold this throne. It is now the Players Era Festival. Just look at these teams. So we got the first 2 days matchups. First day, it is always just as last year, it was Thanksgiving week prior to Thanksgiving. It's going to be the same thing again this year. So starting on Monday, November 24th, we get Tennessee and Rutgers. Tennessee will be a ranked team in the preseason. Rutgers is going to be horrendous this year. I'm just going to quite frankly say it. They weren't very good last year, and they had 2 top 5 picks. This year, their roster is rough. If Steve Pikiell can put a better team together, or make the team this year better than last year's team, wow, that would be crazy stuff. But Rutgers is going to be at the bottom of the Big Ten power rankings when we do that show here. Baylor versus Creighton. This is a fun one. Two similar style coaches with Greg McDermott and Scott Drew, 2 offensive-minded coaches. That game's going to be at 2:00 on Monday. We get Kansas versus Notre Dame. Notre Dame, I think we're kind of looking for the breakout under Coach Shrewsbury. They get Kansas, and we'll get to see Darren Peterson in the spotlight there. We get St. John's versus Iowa State. This should be a ranked-on-ranked matchup. This will be a lot of fun. Rick Pitino, TJ Otzelberger. We get Houston versus Syracuse. Brad Autry, not done a great job there so far. Houston may be your preseason. Probably will be either preseason number 1 or number 2, depending on Purdue. We get Oregon, the defending champ. Yes, Oregon won the Players Era Festival last year, taking on Auburn, coming off their Final Four run, and Bruce Pearl. We get Alabama versus Gonzaga. This might be the game of the tournament, or the game of the first 2 days, excuse me. Definitely the game of the first day, in my opinion. That game's at 9:30. Should be a highly high-scoring game there. At 10:30, we get Michigan, who will probably be a top 10 team in the preseason, taking on San Diego State, who made the championship game in the Players Era Festival last year. Took on Oregon, got beat, but looks like San Diego State has they had a lot of retention this year, a little bit of hopefully some internal development going on over there for Coach Dutcher. San Diego State should be a really good basketball team this year. Maryland taking on UNLV at midnight. Sorry, Maryland fans, you get to play at midnight against probably the weakest team in the tournament, but we get Josh Pastner back at to UNLV this year, so that should be a fun matchup. But unfortunately, it is at midnight for these times are all Eastern times. On Tuesday, we get Rutgers versus Notre Dame. Kind of just a throwaway game, in my opinion. These 2 teams played last year in the Players Era Festival. It actually ended up being a very fun game. Matt Alico, kind of, popped off at the end of the game there, but kind of a rough start to the day there. Then we get Iowa State and Creighton. Otzelberger versus McDermott. That should be a lot of fun. Kansas versus Syracuse. So Syracuse has to play Kansas and Houston. Yeah, that's a tough one for Coach Autry there. St. John's versus Baylor, who we got last year in a thriller in the Battle for Atlantis, or the Baha Mar. It was the Baha Mar. And we got a thriller last year. They get a repeat, hopefully a repeat, and get to play this year. Houston versus Tennessee. Wow, that should be a lot of fun. Rematch of last year's Elite 8 game. 2 defensive-oriented coaches. Going to be a lot of fun. Michigan versus Auburn. Fantastic game there. Gonzaga versus Maryland. That's a good one. Get Maryland under Buzz Williams, taking on the good Gonzaga team. Oregon versus San Diego State, a repeat of last year's championship game. As we mentioned, that one's at 11:00. And then UNLV playing the midnight game again, this time against Alabama. So UNLV with a tough little schedule there, get both of the midnight games. So day 2, I think, has a lot better games than day 1. And then it's It's a tournament style, so everyone gets $1 million to play in this tournament. Every single team listed here. And then the champion also gets an extra $1 million. But obviously, there's a lot of teams playing in this year's event. So what they're going to do is it's just round robin style, obviously, with these two games, and then you get seeded. The third day is the championship day. So say it's St. John's versus Alabama in the championship game. The winner of that game gets an extra $1 million. But it's based. So we're obviously going to have more than just two teams, probably, most likely, going to go 2-0. So after that, it's point differential, then points scored, and then points given up. There's a little bit of gray area in the tournament, but the idea is there. This tournament is going to be here to stay for a really long time. I'll probably be there. The BetMGM had me come last year, so hopefully haven't got the email yet, but hopefully going to come back and watch all these games again this upcoming year. Head down to Vegas as it takes place every year, and it's a great event. This is the future of college basketball right here. It's BetMGM sponsored. It's going to be a lot of fun. So these are the matchups for the Players Era Festival. And then the only other notes that we have to talk about, college basketball is coming back to a video game. How about that? It seems 2028 is going to be the release date. Hopefully it doesn't get pushed back any further than that. So yeah, that's something to look forward to with the success of college football video game. College basketball video game coming back. How about that? That should be a lot of fun. It is going to be an EA game, not a 2K game, but yeah, exciting stuff there. All right, let's get into the meat of the show. But before we dive into the meat of the show, I just want to remind you to hit that like and subscribe button. We're going to start diving deep into some of the rosters. Most of the rosters are 100% complete. We're going to do all the power rankings for every conference. We're going to go in alphabetical order, starting with the ACC this year. Then we're going to dive into Big 12, Big East, Big 10, and then the SEC just in alphabetical order. And then we are going to do a best of the rest show, probably combining that with like the projected conference winners. So we'll talk about, some mid-major teams to know. Obviously, we'll talk about Gonzaga, St. Mary's, Memphis, USF should be really good this year. We'll talk about all those teams in some future shows. And then be sure to follow us on TikTok and Instagram. We're going to start getting really active on there at Bracket Science with 2 S's. It's time to start diving in to college hoop season. Alrighty, without further ado, let's talk about the ACC power rankings. Here they are listed 1 through 18. This is, subject to change a little bit, but what we're going to do is we're going to talk about these teams. We're going to talk a little bit about their roster, maybe some pieces they lost, how they did in the transfer portal, maybe how they did last year, and then maybe just talk about the ACC as a whole and why it's been, so disappointing the past couple of years. So, all right, without further ado, let's start with Duke. So if you see me looking down, it's because I got my cheat sheet of all the rosters on here that I've come up with. So it should be accurate. I'm pretty sure it's fully accurate, but let's dive into it. Obviously, Duke last year was the best team in the country, or according to KenPom, they were the best team for most of the year, and then got beat by Houston in the Final Four, who eventually lost to Florida. But Duke loses superstar Cooper Flagg. They also lose Tyrese Proctor. They also lose Sion James. They lose Mason Gillis. Lose Con Knippel. Yeah, they are losing a lot, but when you're Duke, you get to bring in a lot of fresh talent, starting with the Boozer twins, Cameron and Caden Boozer. Cameron is a top 3, pretty much everywhere you'll find top 3 recruit. 5-star freshman. His brother will probably play a backup point guard role to Caleb Foster, who they bring back. They also bring in Dame Sarr. They retain Darian Harris. They retain Isaiah Evans. They retain Malik Brown. They retain Patrick Ngamba. Ngamba I think he's going to be, an important piece this year. He played a few important minutes last year when it came down to it with Malik Brown's injury late in the year. So he kind of got his feet wet. If he has some internal development this year, which he should, he could be a key force to be reckoned with. They also bring in transfer. I'm not even going to try and pronounce the name. He's a transfer from Rice. Ifeanyi Ufuchukwu or something like that. Yeah, try and pronounce that name. It's tough, but he'll probably play the backup center role to Patrick Ngamba. So you're looking at a starting lineup of probably Caleb Foster, Dame Sarr, Isaiah Evans, Cameron Boozer, and Patrick Ngamba. Maybe Malik Brown is thrown into that starting lineup. Not sure. Darian Harris will be coming off the bench along with Cameron's brother, Caden Boozer. So Duke has a lot of talent coming in again. It's not as talented as last year's team, but most teams we've seen over, the past 20 years haven't been as talented as last year's Duke team. The question is John Shire. Can he get over the hump this year? Will Cameron Boozer really pan out and be, I've seen him number 1 on a few mock drafts. I don't know about that. I'd probably have him number 3, quite frankly, behind Darren Peterson and behind AJ Demansa, but the talent is there. The talent is there. How will he perform? Will he follow? And I mean, Cooper Flagg did not disappoint whatsoever at Duke. He's lived in the moment and, exceeded all expectations. Will Cameron Boozer do the same thing? Not sure. They're the team to beat in the ACC this upcoming year. You're looking at probably a top 5, top 7 preseason AP poll rank for Duke, which is quite frankly right about where they were last year. But last year's team was just they were different. They had a ton of talent. All right, number 2, I do have Louisville. Louisville they will be ranked in the preseason AP poll, no doubt about that. They bring in a lot of shooting under Coach Pat Kelsey. That's his, that's his style. His style is knocking down threes, shooting a ton of threes. They bring in superstar freshman Mikal Brown Jr. Know the name Mikal Brown Jr. He has been popping off in Switzerland this past couple weeks. Him and AJ Devanza have just been kind of separating themselves, by the words of John Rothstein, in Switzerland, preparing for the season at Louisville. So they bring in him, star freshman. They also bring in transfer Ryan Conwell from Xavier. They also bring in transfer Isaac McNeely, transferring in conference from Virginia. Knockdown shooter. Virginia has been horrible offensively. Outside of Isaac McNeely, he has been pretty good. He can knock down the 3. They also bring back Javon Hadley. That's a big one there. Javon Hadley kind of flew under the radar a little bit last year. And then they also returned Kayshawn Pryor, who is coming back from injury. Hopefully he'll be good to go, pretty early in the year, but he was a big part in that team last year. And then when he went down, they kind of had to adjust. They ended up figuring it out and obviously making the tournament. But Kayshawn Pryor going to have a big role this upcoming season. Then they also bring in Adrian Woolley, who will probably come off the bench. He's a transfer from Kennesaw State. Good score, tremendous score. This Louisville team is going to huck threes like no other. So they're making them. They're going to be just about as scary as any team you can play. I'll probably have them preseason ranked right around that 15 mark, but the upside is there with their shooting ability. They can make that deep run national championship. A little bit of a stretch, but this team is going to be, they're going to continue to grow under Pat Kelsey. He's done a tremendous job already. Alrighty, next up, let me try and find them on my roster sheet. Let's talk about North Carolina. North Carolina going to come in at number 3. If you want to throw NC State above North Carolina, I wouldn't hate it. I threw North Carolina there. We'll talk about both the teams here, but it's really close. I think those top 2 are without a doubt your top 2 as of now, and then the next, gets a little bit dicey coming down the stretch. So let's talk about North Carolina. They bring back Seth Trimble. Seth Trimble will be their best player this year. I have no doubt about it. He is going to be. Watch out for Seth Trimble. You saw RJ Davis pop off 2 years ago. I have a feeling that's going to be Seth Trimble this year. I mean, my goodness, maybe I'm buying into the hype of some of these videos I'm seeing of his athleticism and his growth this past year. Whew, he's throwing down windmills at what is he, 6'2", 6'3". He looks sharp. He's got a tremendous shot. Seth Trimble could be little quick peek. He'll probably be in one of my All-American teams in the preseason. I'm really buying in on Seth Trimble this year, but will Hubert Davis hold him back? That's the big question there. They also bring in Kyan Evans from Colorado State, sharpshooter. Very, very good shooter coming in from Colorado State, Kyan Evans. They also bring in Jaden Young, who will probably back up Kyan Evans. He's a transfer from Virginia Tech. Jaron Stevenson is also coming in from Alabama. A guy who we've been waiting to, he's got all the talent in the world. He's huge. He's almost 7 foot, can shoot the 3. Just hasn't really, put it all together yet. He's an NBA draft prospect, or he should have been the past 2 years. If he can really pop off on, and maybe one of the best programs in the entire country, if he can really pop off, he'll really climb up some draft boards. So Jaron Stevenson has a lot to prove. Jonathan Powell transfers in from West Virginia. He'll probably start at the 3. Jaron Stevenson will maybe come off the bench. Their starting lineup's a little bit up for grab. They also bring in a superstar freshman in Caleb Wilson, kind of flying under the radar, a freak athlete. Know the name Caleb Wilson. He'll be a one and done prospect. He looks really good. Then they also bring in Henry Visar from Arizona. Remember when Motajais Krivas went down last year for Arizona? Henry Visar was thrown into that role and he excelled. He was really, really good last year for Arizona. Henry Visar will probably be their starting five this year. And they also returned James Brown. James Brown coming back for another year for Hubert Davis. The question is Hubert Davis. Hubert Davis, this is a hot seat year for him. North Carolina is at worst a top 3 program, top 4, top 5 program in the entire country. Do they have a top 4 or top 5 coach in the entire country? North Carolina can get whoever they want to come coach their team. Is he a top 4, top 5 coach? Probably not as of now. Now, this is his make it or break it year. If they, end up in the play-in game again, this will probably be Hubert Davis's last year for North Carolina. It is a hot seat year. He's got to have a good year. This roster is better than last year's roster, without a doubt. I don't have any question about it, but we'll see. We will see what Hubert Davis can do with it. A roster that is 100% better than last year's roster. North Carolina State in the main addition isn't in the roster. It's in the coaching cycle. It is Will Wade. Will Wade coming in to coach NC State instead of Kevin Keatts, coming off of a Final Four 2 years ago, gets fired. I said it in a previous podcast. I give NC State credit. Kevin Keatts was going to get fired if he didn't make that, that NC State deep run to the Final Four. They were not good that Final Four year. They were not good all season long until they hit the ACC tournament, went on a tear, made the Final Four. Last year, they were even worse. Last year, they were horrible. They didn't even make the ACC tournament last year. They were horrible. So credit where credit's due. I give credit to NC State's, upper management there for getting rid of Kevin Keatts. They bring in Will Wade, and they have their guy. Will Wade has won wherever he's gone. He brings in the most notable name in maybe all of the transfer portal, Darian Williams, the transfer from Texas Tech. Tested the draft waters, ends up coming back to NC State. I'm sure he got a complete bag there. They also bring in Trey Holloman from Michigan State. They bring in Terrence Arsenault from Houston. They bring in Jerry Dang from Florida State. And then they bring in Van Allen Lubin from North Carolina, who, wow, North Carolina fans hate Van Allen Lubin because he said he was basically going to come back and then ends up leaving and then ends up going to a rival. How about that? They also bring in a few other names, Colt Langdon from Butler. They bring in Quadir Copeland from McNeese to follow along with his coach, Will Wade. They also bring in Alan Breed from McNeese following his coach, Will Wade, to NC State. So they put together a pretty good roster here, pretty solid roster. Last year's roster, not good. There's a lot of pieces that need to fit together, which is why I put North Carolina above NC State. But Will Wade's a transfer menace. He can really get the job done. So putting together, he's filled out the roster size-wise perfectly, in my opinion. Trey Holloman at the point, Arsenault at the 2, Darian Williams as your 3, Jerry Dang at the 4, and Van Allen Lubin at the 5. Starting lineup's good. Coming off the bench, you got Quadir Copeland, who played at Syracuse before transferring to McNeese. He's a power 5 level guy. It's a good roster. Will the pieces fit together? Where will their scoring come from is my main concern. I know Darian Williams can score the ball. I'm a little hesitant on Trey Holloman. He kind of just is what he is at this point. Not too much room for growth. He's a winner. Don't get me wrong. He is a winner. Good player. Terrence Arsenault has struggled to score the ball. Tremendous defender. A little worried about the offense, but Will Wade is a tremendous offensive mind. Quadir Copeland can score the ball as well. So a little worried about that if I'm nitpicking just a little bit, but this NC State team is going to be good. I will have them probably ranked in my preseason rankings. At worst, probably top 30. This NC State team should be in the tournament next year, in my opinion. All right, next up, let's talk about Clemson. Brad Brownell's Clemson team. They lose a lot. But I'm buying into the system. Brad Brownell has continued to win, even though, funny enough, they got beat by McNeese last year and Will Wade badly in that first round. They actually kind of fought back a little bit late, but yeah, it was an ugly showing for Clemson. So Clemson loses Chase Hunter. They lose Ian Shiflin. They lose Victor Locken. Ian Shiflin is actually going to play for the football team this year, though, but he is out of eligibility for basketball. How about that? Kind of a cool story there. They do still have Dylan Hunter, which is big. And one of the most underappreciated transfers we've seen all year is the Nick Davidson transfer coming in from Nevada, going to Clemson from Nevada. This is a perfect fit. He's going to fit into that system so perfectly. The, kind of PJ Hall-ish kind of player, can shoot the 3, bigger guy. I think he's going to fit in this system just perfectly for Brad Brownell. do not be surprised if you see Nick Davidson as a first-team All-ACC guy next year. I think he's going to fit perfectly. They also bring in RJ Godfrey from Georgia. He's a high upside kind of guy. They bring in Carter Welling from Utah Valley. A lot of guys that are, lower major transferring up, which I'm a little bit worried about. But in terms of just high floor, I think Clemson is above, the likes of SMU, Virginia, Miami, Notre Dame. This is probably their ceiling is probably fifth in general, but I'm trusting Brad Brownell. Last year, their roster didn't look as fantastic as obviously the year before where they made the Elite Eight, but they still finished, tied for second in the ACC. And, I know they got beat in the first round, but they were still a 5 seed. So they were still a really good team. I trust the internal development there. Dylan Hunter should make a big jump this year. And then the addition of Nick Davidson, I really like it. I'm buying in on this Clemson team to make the tournament again this year. Next up is SMU, coached by Andy Enfield. SMU is just flushed with cash at, down in Dallas. The Enfield zone is kind of, taken over, at SMU, where he just kind of finishes, in that same range at KenPom, right around 55th-ish every single year. Andy Enfield, obviously, last year was his first year. This will be year 2 at a school, which we know makes all the difference in the world. They retain Kevin Miller, which will be a big one. Watch out for Kevin Miller. He can make a big impact this year. They bring in Jaron Pierre from Jacksonville State. Know the name Jaron Pierre? He could be a big piece for this SMU team. SMU, and that's how Andy Enfield teams are every year. High upside, but they can, it can also be not a disaster, but, kind of just a fail with all the talent that they bring in. They also bring in Sam Walters from Michigan. Remember the sharpshooting lefty, started at Alabama, transferred to Michigan last year. Didn't play too much, got hurt, but he'll be back for another year. They do lose a lot. They lose Cario Aquendo. They lose Matt Cross. They lose Chuck Harris. They lose Keon Ambrose. They lose Tibet Goriner, I believe was how you pronounce his name, all seniors. So they're losing quite a bit, but the upside that they're bringing in is pretty good. They have a pretty good recruiting class, most notably Jaden Toombs, who is the 38th ranked player in the 2025 class. So there's always upside, but they always finish in the Enfield zone, 50th, 45th, 55th, right around that zone. But with their upside, I got them 6th this year. Really wanted to put Virginia above SMU, just couldn't quite get all the way there. All right, so speaking of Virginia, let's talk about him. New coach coming in, Ryan Odom, who we gave this an A grade in our coaching carousel grades. Ryan Odom was just built to be the Virginia coach. The route he took to get there at UMBC, beating Virginia as the first 16 seed to ever beat a 1 seed. He then goes to VCU in the state of Virginia, excels there, makes the tournament last year, and now gets hired at Virginia. How cool is that? So with a new coach, you're going to expect a lot of transfers, and they do have it in. Dallin Hall, the transfer from BYU. I don't know why he left BYU. I never really saw that story, but I really thought he was going to stick there. He didn't. He transfers, as does Jakari White from North Dakota State. Know the name Jakari White? He is a high-level player. They also bring in Malik Thomas from San Francisco. They bring in Devin Tillis from UC Irvine. They bring in Ugana Onyenso, who's a bigger name. He started at Kentucky, transferred to Kansas State, is now coming to Virginia. So they have a lot of pieces. They have a lot of pieces coming in. They're going to be better than they were last year under Ron Sanchez. I can fully say that. I think they're going to be a fringe bubble team all year. If Ryan Odom does a good job, I think they'll probably, get to a 7 or 8, 9 seed. If not, if it's the first year and they kind of struggle a little bit, pieces just don't really fit together. I think they'll be fighting on the bubble and, maybe first couple teams out. But this Virginia team, the future is bright. Year 1, I think he's put together a pretty solid roster for a good job, not a fantastic job, not one of the best jobs in the country, but a good job in college basketball. And I think he put together, a decent little roster here. So we'll see what Virginia can do. A little bit of an unknown at this point, in even probably a bigger unknown. Miami under Jay Lucas for the first year. They have brought in a high upside roster that looks really good on paper. Will they put together all the pieces? We will see. At point guard, they bring in Trey Donaldson from Michigan, also formerly at Auburn. Bring in True Washington, who was kind of the second guy in line last year at New Mexico behind Donovan Dent. He's coming in as well. Shelton Henderson is the star freshman, 14th ranked recruit in the country. He's coming in. They also bring in Malik Renew from Indiana. Then they bring in Ernest Uday from TCU, also formerly at Kansas. So a lot of high upside guys. This roster kind of reminds me of the Texas A&M roster, which we talked about previously, where it's like, yeah, individually they have good players. Don't get me wrong, but will it work? Will they all fit together? I'm a little hesitant to believe it. We'll see what Jay Lucas can do because Trey Donaldson, he made the Sweet 16 last year. True Washington won a game last year for New Mexico. Malik Renew, I don't like Malik Renew, quite frankly. I'll just come out and say it. I don't think he's a winning player. I think he's hard to build around. He's just not that high upside guy. He's good. Don't get me wrong. He's a good player, but we'll see what he can do in a new system here. Ernest Uday has just kind of been, I hate to say the word, but a little bit of a disappointment. I know he's battled some stuff, but we'll see what he can do if he can kind of excel in this new environment. They also bring in Marcus Allen, who will probably back up Malik Renew, is what I'm thinking. He's got some high upside as well. And then the other freshman to know is Dante Allen, probably will back up True Washington. So they've got some pieces. It's just kind of a question of Jay Lucas. They have a high ceiling. They could also have a low floor if this goes wrong. Obviously, Miami's got quite a bit of money going on over there. Jay Lucas, he left Duke, which I didn't like. He left Duke before the tournament run. It kind of gained some controversy. And then everyone's like, well, he's kind of the defensive mind there at Duke. Will they, make a run in the NCAA tournament? And then, quite frankly, they should have made the championship game, but they blew a lead deep in the Final Four to that Houston team. But so obviously Jay Lucas wasn't. I don't know. Maybe if they had Jay Lucas, they win the championship, but probably not. I think Jay Lucas just that talent did what it did itself. So will Jay Lucas fit at Miami? We will see. The biggest swing and miss for the ACC released their conference opponents throughout the season. Duke does not even play Miami this year. That was a huge swing and a miss. Why they would do that, I don't know. Two of the bigger brands, and obviously the old assistant coach from Duke going to Miami, and they won't even play each other. Don't know about that one, but yeah, that's how the ACC has just kind of been the past couple years, I guess we'll say, as it just has not been going too spectacular there. All right, let's talk about Notre Dame at our number 9 spot. Notre Dame could be really improved this year. They should have been really improved last year. I was high on the team going in, and it just didn't work out. It just did not work out at all. But they bring back Marcus Burton. Marcus Burton was their best player last year. He'll be their best player this year. Braden Shrewsbury continues to improve. They bring in Sir Muhammad, who's the sophomore. He's coming back for another year. Jalen Harrelson is the 19th ranked player in his 2025 class. He is coming in. And then Kebi Nije is also back for another year. So they have a lot of retention along with a good freshman. Didn't do a lot in the transfer portal. They brought in Carson Tout from Northern Arizona. He'll be a senior. Can he pop off? We will see. They also have a lot of freshmen coming in. We talked about Harrelson. They also bring in Ryder Frost, Tommy Ainman, I believe is how it's pronounced, and then Brady Kohler. So, you can see what Micah Shrewsbury is trying to build there. He's trying to build a culture. He's trying to build a internal development sort of thing, which you can do at Notre Dame. I know you're kind of restricted with, the education there as great as it is. And so, yeah, I like the roster it's put together, or that Shrewsbury's put together. I think it could be a tournament team at best this year. I also thought the same thing last year. That was kind of the bold prediction in the preseason. And I think that was kind of a popular, bold prediction for a lot of people that Notre Dame would be good last year, and they just didn't pan out. But will this year be the year? Marcus Burton could be a first-team All-ACC kind of guy this year. We will see. All right, next up, let's talk about Pitt. Pitt coming off a hugely disappointing year last year. They need something going this year. Pitt fans are starting to lose their minds a little bit, as they should. That team was good last year. They were good 2 years ago and haven't made the tournament. They probably should have 2 years ago. But last year, man, what a disappointing year. So, yeah, they lose Jalen Lowe. They lose Jorge Diaz. They lose Guillermo Diaz. They lose Ishmael Leggett. They graduated Zach Austin. So they're pretty much in a rebuild kind of year. They brought in 2 guys from Iowa State. Nojas Indrusaitis. He didn't play much last year, played a little bit. I know that's probably not how you pronounce the last name. They also brought in Deshaun Jackson, who did play significant minutes last year, just a big body down low, big center. They brought in Barry Dunning Jr. from South Alabama and DeMarco Minor from Oregon State. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure about this roster coming into this year. The 10 through like 15, 16 spots are just kind of, pick your poison. They're all not great. So we hinted in the thumbnail of, is the bottom half of the ACC going to be bad again? Yeah, they are. It does not look good. If any team 10 through 18 makes the tournament, I'll be surprised. I will be very surprised. I don't like these rosters going forward. They do bring back Cam Corrin, who could be a solid piece, in my opinion, with Indrusaitis and Deshaun Jackson. But so the front court should be decent. The back court, a little worried about with DeMarco Minor. He's going to have to transfer up. Yeah, we're going to see. We're going to see. Not too high on this roster whatsoever. Next up at number 11 is Pitt's rival, Syracuse. Syracuse I have at number 11 here. Red Autry in a he's in a hot seat year, 100%, as he should be. He has not done a good job so far at Syracuse. Year 1 actually went okay, and they're like, oh, maybe Syracuse, can make something out of this. Last year was a disaster, and this year I think it's going to be a disaster again. They brought in Nate George from Georgia Tech, along with Ibrahim Soare from Georgia Tech as well. Not 2 transfers I would pick off if you're Syracuse in the ACC. If you're stealing from an ACC team, I don't know about that. In good news, they lost a ton of players from last year's team. They lost Jaquan Carlos, Lucas Taylor, Jair Davis, and Eddie Lampkin, who Eddie Lampkin might have been my best take of last year. I said the most overrated transfer of last year was Eddie Lampkin going to Syracuse. And yeah, he just wasn't a great basketball player. No disrespect to Eddie Lampkin, but everywhere he went, he got a lot of hype. They called him Baby Shaq, and then yeah, just wasn't great. So in terms of bringing in, they bring in William Kyle from UCLA. Don't love it whatsoever either. They brought in Nate Kings from Oregon State. They brought in Tyler Betsy from Cincinnati. Yeah, you don't know the name. There's a reason he didn't play much. I don't like this roster whatsoever. I don't know if Syracuse is lacking money. I don't know how they'd be lacking money. They've been a powerhouse for a while. They have the biggest arena in the country, have a lot of income coming in, but I think the fans once are starting to turn on Coach Autry over there. So we'll see what if he can, kind of save his job, or I think next year it's going to be a coaching carousel sort of year. At number 12, I got Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech seems, coming into last year, I think I had them 17th last year. I got them 12th this year, so I think they have a little bit more money coming in. The main pickup was Amani Hansberry from West Virginia. I like this pickup. I think he's going to fit into Virginia Tech really well. They bring back Ben Hammond. They got Tyler Johnson. They brought in transferred Jalen Bedford from UNLV. They brought in Isaiah Pasha from Delaware. 2 decent gets. You're Virginia Tech. You can't expect to get a ton, but Jaden Shutt is back for another year. Toby Lal. It's not a good roster, but I think it's better than last year's roster. And remember I don't even remember who said the quote last year for Virginia Tech. They're like, y'all thought we were going to suck, and we sucked, but we weren't that bad. We weren't as bad as you thought. I'm paraphrasing, but we weren't as bad as you thought we were going to be. And they weren't, they weren't good, but they won a few games in the ACC. I think that's kind of what they'll do again this year, and kind of climb towards the top. Not towards the top, towards the top of the bottom, I should say. All right, next up, I got Stanford. I want Stanford to be good so bad. For those who don't know, I'm a huge Kyle Smith fan. I think he's a fantastic basketball coach. This roster is horrible. I probably gave him the benefit of the doubt being 13 above, but I mean, we'll talk about Wake Forest roster is horrible, as is Florida State. So the bottom half of the ACC is just going to be bad. But I think Kyle Smith is a tremendous basketball coach, and I don't know why the roster isn't good. I mean, I know it's obviously it's the Ivy League of the West, they call it. It's a high education place. Still, I thought I thought they'd buy into Kyle Smith and get him some serious money. Yeah, I don't know. So they graduate Maxime Reynaud, which is tough. That's tough. He was probably the second best player in the ACC last year, and the team still wasn't great. Starting lineup is probably going to be Benny Giller back for another year, Anthony Batson, Ryan Ogwall, Donovan Young, and then Aiden Kamen. They didn't bring in any transfers. They got some, at least not that I know of. They brought in some high school recruits. They brought in Oscar Gilte, I believe is how you pronounce it, from Belgium. They brought in Krister Skrinda, Aduka Okore, and Jalen Petty. I don't know much about any of these guys. I'm not going to act like I do, but yeah. Did you recognize any name that I said? Yeah, probably not. It's not a great roster. I trust Kyle Smith, and if he can fit the pieces together, maybe, he can. I said last year quite a few times whenever we talk about the ACC and Stanford, Kyle Smith's going to win there at some point. He's a good basketball coach. He won at Washington State a couple years ago. People don't win at Washington State. He is a great basketball coach. I don't know why the roster is so bleak, but I'm kind of betting on Kyle Smith to put them above of Florida State and Wake Forest. All right, let's talk about Florida State and Wake Forest before getting to the real bottom feeders of the ACC. Let me try and as I search for, there we go. There's Florida State. All right, this is what their roster is looking like. They have a ton of transfers coming in, as you'd expect, under new coach Luke Laux. I don't like the hire of Luke Laux first and foremost. I think I like this the least. I like this even less than I like the Alex Jensen hire at Utah, and I was low on that one. I don't like this Luke Laux hire in general. They bring in Robert McCray from Jacksonville. They bring in Kobe McGee from Drexel. They bring in Chauncey Wiggins from Clemson, which I kind of like that addition. I do like the Chauncey Wiggins addition. They bring in Martin Somerville from UMass Lowell. What are you noticing about a lot of these transfers? A lot of low major, and not low major like good teams last year of like high upside guys. No, just a lot of low major guys trying to build a low major all-star team. It looks like they bring in Alex Steen from Florida Southern, Leje Jones from St. Bonaventure, transferring from Woj over there, and then Shahid Muhammad, the transfer from UMass. Yeah, not a good roster. Not a good roster. That's kind of like DePaul last year put together kind of a mid-major all-star team. We're like, yeah, that's pretty good for a team with no money. You're Florida State, for God's sakes. This is pretty much the same roster as DePaul built last year, and DePaul might have built a better roster, at least in my opinion. I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe this will work. Maybe he's a great eye for talent, but doesn't seem great. You would think Florida State has a lot of money, but I don't know. They do bring back AJ Swinton, which should be a good one. AJ Swinton and Chauncey Wiggins playing together. Maybe that could work real well. Maybe it might not. We'll see about Florida State, but I don't like this roster whatsoever. Speaking of a roster that just completely is just not good, we'll just say Wake Forest. I got it 15th. Makai Mason is transferring in from Washington. Maybe, that could work. They bring back Juke Harris. They bring in Sebastian Akins from Denver. They bring in Miles Colvin from Purdue, and I have not been a Miles Colvin guy from the get-go. I don't think Miles Colvin, I didn't think he was good at Purdue 2 years ago. I didn't think he was good last year when he was supposed to make the step. I don't know much about this. I don't feel too great about things with this roster. They bring back Omaha Billu, bring back Trayvon Spillers, and then they bring in Cooper Schweiger to probably play the center position from Valparaiso. Why is that your center? Nate Kalmes is also in from Washington State. This roster, there's no stars on this roster whatsoever. If you're expecting Miles Colvin to be your star, you're in for a rough awakening. Last year, Miles Colvin pretty much fell out of the rotation for Purdue. And I know Purdue is going to be probably a preseason number 1 or number 2 this year. That Purdue team last year, they made the Sweet 16. They were good, but they weren't like awesome where like they were just riveting with talent. Miles Colvin was supposed to be the starter, and he played his way out of the rotation. I'm not bought in on Miles Colvin. Makai Mason did not win last year at all at Washington. Nate Kalmes, I can kind of see that vision at Wake Forest. And then Juke Harris, can he make a big improvement? We'll see. I don't know. They do lose Cam Hildreth, which I think is just a win. They lose Hunter Salas, which is a huge loss. Obviously, he was pretty much their heart and soul last year. 15 might be a little low for Wake Forest. I like the roster better than Florida State. They should probably be ahead of Florida State, probably even ahead of Stanford. All right, if I were to redo it, I made this a couple days ago, I'd probably put Wake Forest probably about number 12, but not great. Not great. So when I post this graphic, you'll probably see Wake Forest at number 12. I'm kind of second guessing myself a little bit, but I don't like it. I don't think this team's going to be very good. And Steve Forbes, quite frankly, he did a bad job last year. They should have been better, and they were not good. He did a bad job last year. So see if this is a rebound year. Yeah, not a great roster. Like I said, 10 through 16. Put them in any order you want. It doesn't look great. All right, at number 16, Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech loses Javion McCullum. They lose Lance Terry. They bring in Lamar Washington from Pacific. Bring in Chaz Kelly from Boston College. They bring in Cam Kraft from Miami. Bring in Peyton Marshall. They do bring back Bay and Dongo, Kawasi Reeves, Jaden Mustaf. Yeah, they just don't have a lot of money under Coach Damon Stoudemire here. And I like Damon Stoudemire. I think he's, a guy who has a future being a basketball coach. I don't know if I can say that about a ton of programs, like, no disrespect, like Georgia Tech, that don't have a lot of money and, are just kind of looking for a guy to maybe, have one good year and get to the tournament by a miracle. I think Damon Stoudemire will be a coach for a while at the Power 5 level. I think he's got the ability to do it. It's just, they just don't have any money. This roster looks bleak. It doesn't look good. They're a bottom 3 or 4 job in the ACC right now, but I think they have a better than bottom 3 or 4 coach in the ACC. So Georgia Tech got a good coach, but we'll see. We'll see what you can do. Cal is just in a rough spot, quite frankly, in their money situation. It seems coming over from the Pac-12 last year, they were not good. It doesn't look like they're going to be very good this year. They do bring in Day Ames from Virginia. Remember, he didn't end up playing last year that was Jalen Ward. Day Ames played, but yeah, we'll see what he can do. Justin Pippen transfers in from Michigan. Chris Bell transfers in from Syracuse. Milos Ilic transfers in from Loyola, Maryland, and Sammy Yine is a freshman coming in, he is a transfer from Grand Canyon. So they put together a transfer roster. It looks better than last year's roster, but it's just not a very fantastic roster. Where's their scoring going to come from? I don't know. They have a bunch of losing players. Virginia was not good last year. Justin Pippen didn't really, is Justin Pippen a freshman? Did he transfer? I can't even remember. I didn't know the name, but Chris Bell wasn't a winning player last year at Syracuse. They also brought in transfer from Loyola, Maryland. They brought in transfer from Delaware, Campbell. No winning programs, so not real optimistic about this Cal team last year. And then, as sad as it is, just penciling it in, Boston College at the last spot. They're just have no money whatsoever. They did bring in Jason Ace Moda from Baylor. Not a bad little transfer there. They brought in Aiden Shaw from Missouri. They brought in Bowden Cap from Butler and Chase Forte from South Dakota. They also bring back Fred Payne, Kenny Tichanga. Jaden Hastings is here as well. Not a good roster. It's Boston College. You can't expect to have a fantastic roster there. It's quite frankly the worst job in the ACC. It's probably the least amount of money in the ACC, but yeah, it's just a pencil in at last, unfortunately, for Boston College fans. It's just what you got to do with the Eagles, unfortunately. So that is it, 1 through 18. The bottom half looks rough. Pencil them in any order. I'll probably switch some things and overthink some things before posting the graphic on Monday night. You'll hear this. This will release Monday morning. So I'll probably make a few changes. So if you see it on Instagram and TikTok, be sure to go check it out. I like to just kind of discuss my initial thoughts when I look at the rosters and then, kind of change a little bit from there. So follow us on Instagram and TikTok. That's the last plug, at Bracket Science with 2 S's. And before we get out of here, let's just talk about the odds to win the national championship next year. We haven't talked about it yet. Houston is your favorite at plus 900. Purdue is your second favorite at plus 1,000. Those will probably be your top 2 teams in the AP poll, depending on which way they go. Duke at plus 1,300, UConn plus 1,400, Michigan plus 1,500, BYU 1,600, as is Florida, and St. John's both plus 1,600. Kentucky at plus 1,800, Kansas plus 2,000, Louisville plus 2,200, Arkansas, Texas Tech, and Arizona all plus 2,500. I like this. This seems pretty fair to me. I have St. John's number 3 overall, so I also have Kentucky a little bit higher, so a little higher on those teams, but in in general, I think this is a pretty good job by BetMGM Sportsbook right here. So here's what we got. That's going to do it for today. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. We're going to go through a lot more rosters. Today we did the ACC, which quite frankly, no disrespect to the ACC, is probably the most boring conference to talk about just because the bottom half is so bad. And it's just like, oh God, who cares about any of these guys? You know, if we're lucky, one of those teams will be top 8 of the ACC. One of these 10 through 18 teams could maybe squeeze in the top 8, and then we'll talk about them more. But you're probably not going to see more than one of these teams, kind of succeed this year. So maybe Wake Forest has a rebuild year. I don't know. But this was the initial reaction. Preseason power rankings. As again, we'll post it on our Instagram and TikTok. So be sure to go check that out. We'll make a few changes, I promise. Go check it out. Hit the like and subscribe button. We'll talk about the Big 12 in probably 2 weeks. We're probably going to go every 2 weeks. Don't want to overload with, content. But 2 weeks, Big 12, like and subscribe. Everyone have a great rest of the week. We'll see you later.